Skinner, and no doubt a couple of mentions of West Bromwich Albion.
Have we started? Oh, for goodness sake. We should have a bit, you see, where you're going to have a little intro, so it's like you need me to come into the... Shall I come into the door?
Come in.
I'll come in. You just stay there, and I'll come in, and it'll be like, oh, hello, like people do on a programme I haven't remembered. Now, where did I... Oh. Hello, so this is my new home. Documentaries turn up, they interview people like your old mates and your family. They either use the interviews or don't use, or use a little bit of them, or think we'll put that bit in because it makes them sound stupid, and don't give a shit whether it ruins the rest of the person's life, as long as it's a fairly titillating, interesting documentary. I feel I'll be all right because, you know, I don't think anything's going to come out in this that isn't in the book, really, and in the book I've kind of spilt the beans. I'm still a bit worried about my sister, because my sister said to me, you're not going to tell people that we were poor, are you? And I don't see how I really could keep that bit quiet. No, I don't think I can go tomorrow. I'm supposed to be seeing 3 girls tomorrow night at the same time. I'd use this as a trailer. Tonight on ITV, Frank Skinner, comedian. I'm going to the Albion that night, yeah. And find out what it's like to be a top TV funny man. Can't go in the day because I've got press interviews. That's the trailer, Don, see? Right there, that's going to save everybody a lot of bother. I'm going to miss an audience with Kylie Minogue as well, aren't I? That's such a blow. As long as it's essentially got the symbol for fuck off in it, to me, that's television.
He has the confidence to have faith in being himself. Frank, you know, it's him. I don't mean that he necessarily bears his soul, because I don't think he does, because there's a part of Frank that we don't see.
He is very, very funny bloke just to hang around with in real life.
You got it, you got it. Oh, it's just like MTV.
Frank almost always is the funniest person in the room at any one time, but where he gets away with it and where it's not wearing, generally, is there's always a sense with Frank that he can't help it, right? That he's not doing it because he's trying to do it, he's doing it because it's almost like an illness.
It's the fact that you can only make 2 cups with a goblin tea's made is the only reason I've never had a 3 in a bed in this room. Because I don't like to leave anyone out.
When you're out with him, it's just non-stop laughter all night long. I mean, this is without getting paid for it or anything, just in the group, standing in the pub, like, you know. He just couldn't stop, and he can't stop now.
Can't see your pants. Oh, no, sorry, I thought they were pants.
That's who most stand-ups portray, is the witty guy that we all wish we were at the time. But Frank is that person all the time. It's almost like his mind's overactive, like an overactive gland.
You got a question? Marks and Spencer's, that's what I'd recommend. If you need some quick.
He's a machine, you know. I've heard him described as a robot, you know, as a comedy robot.
No matter how moving and sentimental I get, why do I always have to end it with an anal sex joke?
There's the negative side of it, like of a long car journey, where you just think, oh, just stop, you know, let's talk about something else, and it doesn't have to end with a joke.
Jokes are the finality. It's like an orgasm, you know. It's like, achoo, or oh, you know. And he would always come first, and that made me quite angry, because I could feel the joke coming too, but Frank could claim it first, because he actually has this horrible natural wit.
There was a comedian suit hanging somewhere in my wardrobe that I didn't put on until I was 30. And I was a comedian in waiting. My whole life accidentally had been research for this job. I was born Christopher Graham Collins. At school they call me Christopher, at home they call me Graham. But now I am TV funny man Frank Skinner. And this is my world. So here we are at my old junior school. I'm about to go into the barbers where I used to go both as a small child and as a teenager. This is St Hubert's Church. This is the Blue Gates pub in Smethwick. I got a job at Hughes and Johnson's Stampings, which is literally next door to the pub. I used to live here.
Okay.
I lived here for 7.5 years.
7.5 years?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Okay, badgers, this is Frank.
God, this is a little chair.
Small version.
Am I all right on this chair? Can you see all right? Yeah. OK. Do you know what I do?
Make people laugh.
I make people laugh. That's the idea. It's a strange job, isn't it? Look, it works already. I was at this school, right, this will shock you, between 1965 and 1968, which is a long time ago.
Badgers, if you...
Yeah, in the 60s. What do you think this school used to be like in the 60s?
Rudy.
It was black and white. It was, yeah. It was all in black and white in them days because it was so old-fashioned. Because I used to live... Do you know where Bristol Road is? Yeah. Yeah, I used to live in Bristol Road. In one of the houses down there. This is where I grew up for the first 20 years of my life. And although I've driven up and down here a few times since, I've never actually been in the house where I grew up, which is just up there. And it's very odd sitting here. This road kind of, I think, developed my chip-on-the-shoulder working-class personality because this side of the road is council houses. Or at least it was, it might have changed, that's what it was then, and that's private houses.
No, he hasn't changed one bit.
Yeah, changed at all, mate.
No.
It's still kind of my home as far as my imagination's concerned. So to go in and have a look at it in reality is going to be spooky.
When we first seen him on the telly, I says to my husband, I says, oh, that's Christy Collins. I says, that is. I said, that's Graham Collins. He said, no, it ain't. I says, it is. I said, no, we used to call him Graham.
Something else we never had around here was cars.
And I said to John, that's Graham. And he said, it ain't, it ain't. I said, it is. And it was.
Let's go in the house. There's a picture of me when I'm one, sitting on this lawn. It's a bit wet, so I'm not going to do it now. But I'm sitting like this, with a smile, with my hands on my genitals, and I seem to be saying, you know, these are genitals, and I find them funny, and thus I will make my career. My dad painted that. My dad was from the northeast and my mum was a local woman from Oldbury. He came down apparently to play in a football match for Spennymoor United against West Bromwich Albion in the 1937 FA Cup. And while he was down here he met my mum and eventually he moved down here and they had babies, the last of which was me. My dad was a bloke who, as well as being like a local character, also used to sing in pubs and stuff. He had something that made him think there was something else beyond it all. So, for the first time in, I think, 25 years, I'm going to go into our backyard. This was the outside toilet. I bet it's not anymore. Yeah. This was my outside... This was the toilet, basically. And that was the coal house. The thing with the toilet was, because it was outside, we never fancied getting up in the middle of the night to actually go to the toilet. So if you woke up in the middle of the night and you wanted to piss, you had to have a bucket, basically, in the bedroom. And I've always felt that for all the Registrar General's definitions of working classness, like education, occupation, interests, income and all that, the only true definition of the working class, if you grew up with a piss bucket in your bedroom, you're working class. If you didn't, you're posh. I'm going to go in. This used to be, the kitchen would be here, kind of smallish, and then this was the bathroom. And the bathroom was downstairs. And the cooker wasn't in the kitchen, the cooker was in the bathroom. So, on the rare occasions we had a bath, you could find yourself in a situation where you was having your bath and your mum was doing egg and bacon. There used to be a pipe that came out the wall, a gas pipe, and you'd turn it on and light it, and a big flame would come out of it, like, and that was like heat and light in the bathroom. Unbelievable. So this is the playground where I discovered all about football, sex and religion, which has kind of got me through life. We used to play. First of all, there was like a netball pitch here. And when I first started playing football, this is where I started to play. I would be 8 years old then. It hasn't changed that much. And there, towering above the playground, is the reminder of why we're all here and why we have to behave ourselves. There's the big white cross of St Hubert's Church, reminding us that whatever you do in this playground, whether there's a teacher around or not, God is watching. I was thinking of the many hours of torment I had in this playground, playing football. Seeing kids making mistakes here and being a bit frightened of the ball and going in for headers like this really reminds me what I was like. I did it then, even. Oh dear, I so wanted to be good at it as well, more than anything. So, I like football and I like girls. That's what I decided when I was here. And probably they're the two things that I've been worst at in my whole life. Probably brought me more grief, disappointment, disillusionment, anguish, insecurity and depression than any other two things. And also more joy, hysteria, passion, fulfillment than any two things. So, this was where me, Terry and Keith all stayed together. Me and Keith had a bed, one bed that we slept in. It's good here because I used to have all these things on the wall. It's got now sprayed on the wall here, life smells and so do my bitches, which is... If I'd have done that, my old man would have absolutely killed me. But hey, I know what they mean.
I would say it was a genuinely deprived background that Frank was from, and also kind of intellectually deprived, you know, in the sense that he's a very bright bloke. He was clearly, at one point in his life, was hemmed in by a notion of that because he didn't know what it was, you know, in that, you know, Frank left school, was kicked out of school when he was 16, went to work in a factory, and then made a decision to give up work in the factory and go back to school. And that's the thing that I always think, and I've never quite got it out of him, what made you realise that that was a good idea?
When I was a kid, I had this urge to shout. I mean, really shout loudly, which obviously I wasn't allowed to do. So one night, I walked up the garden. I got to the top of the garden, and I stood here like this, and now there was just like a muffled sound of the telly and a bit of family talking and a little bit of light, but basically I was standing in the dark and it was pretty quiet. And I was a tiny little kid and I just stood like this and I just listened to the night, listened to how quiet everything was. And I stood there and I knew I was about to break the silence because I was going to start screaming. And but I started off just kind of going, I mean, obviously I was little, so it's probably in reality. But then I leaned back and I remember it so clearly, even though it was nearly 40 years ago. And then I got a bit louder. And I went, About 3 times. And it felt great. Even then it felt pretty good. And I used to do it every night for about 3 weeks. I used to look forward to it. In the day I'd think, oh, I'm going to have a shout tonight. And then one night, well, one day, the next door neighbour from over there came round and said to me dad, he said, look, I was letting the dog out to do his business last night and I heard shouting, he said, and there was I could see a little figure at the top of the garden with his hands out shouting. I think it was your Graham, as they called me. And I had to stop in the, in our cosy warm kitchen and wasn't allowed. Good to do it again though. In those days, you used to go along to the youth employment office and they used to advise you on what you should do with the rest of your life. I went up to the counter and she said, what kind of work are you looking for? And I said, well, I'm going to be a pop star, so no need for anything too desperate, just to tide me over, really. And she looked down at the bit of paper that said that I'd got 2 O-levels. And she said, look, someone with your qualifications, you could do something with your life if you had 2 O-levels. She was looked on at some sort of freaky Stephen Hawking kind of intellectual. So she said there's a job going at Hughes & Johnson's. Well, it was near to the pub I drank at, so I thought that'll be convenient, and I took it on. That was the kind of office bit there. And it was the kind of office that had things on the wall like, you don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps. And I once had a debate with one of the women there, and I said, actually, if you were mad and you worked here, it really wouldn't help at all, would it? You'd be depressed, you'd be volatile, you'd be bad company, people would be edgy about it. And it was conversations like that that kind of put them off me. Theory was that was where I was going to stay for the rest of my life. That was what you did. You went to school, you left school, you worked in a factory, you got pissed on the night time until you met a girl that you sort of fancied and you married her and you banged out a couple of kids, and then you went off her and you got even more pissed on the night time, and then you died, and that was it.
Hello, Swimbo.
Hello, mate.
Big Taurus, isn't it?
I don't know if you remember me.
Yes, I see you. I'm telling you, I've known him since he was 11. And I'm 44. He's the same. So, he's a great bloke. Same as a painter. Known each other years, knocked to bed for years, gone through a few escapades and scrapes. And, oh, he's great. Anyway, what are you drinking?
What am I drinking? It's a good question. Still pop, I'm afraid. You know, it's been nearly 15 years.
Inspector. Oh, it's all right. He was waking up in the morning and drinking sherry before he'd even got out of bed and gone and brushed his teeth, had a wash. Reached there for a pop of sherry, but obviously he's getting out of hand.
Well, you know, I'd like to be able to go out and have like 3 pints, but it's not going to happen, is it?
Oh, he could. I love him to bits. He knows that.
Where do you live, Chris? I live in, well, Belsize Park, right next door to it.
Posh area?
Yeah, very. Oh, very posh.
Really? How come all you Londoners smack them Marlboro lights? That's what I want to know.
Because we're soft.
I don't watch much of you on the telly, tell you the truth.
Still on the bin?
Yep.
Shane, you ain't changed much, I have to say. I think we've aged pretty well, considering our terrible lifestyles.
Well, I'm still doing it.
No, yeah. Respect.
He got lucky, basically, I suppose. Got lucky. Fair play to him. He's, you know, made his money and whatnot. But he's still a mate. He's still from round here, so... Remember when we went to Brewing that time?
Yeah.
And William booked the caravan.
I remember when you got hit over the head with the, I think first a wine bottle.
Remember the outdoor toilets at the Queen's Head?
Do you remember when we was playing on the barge down Langley? And someone had a shit on there and covered it in grit.
Now, can you remember that? Now,
When we drank ourselves sober.
yeah, woke up in that ditch.
Do you remember when we got, when we was arsehole and I fell over on the railway?
We laughed our bollocks off.
Poor old Fez.
Yeah, God rest his soul, yeah. That was the last time I saw him.
Fez's funeral.
Yeah. Well, he knows where I drink, he knows where I live. So, you know, or he knows where my mum lives. She'll come round more often as well when he's round this way. Especially when he's watching the Albion. She'll come and see us more often. You know your phone number? Or the phone numbers of that?
Yeah.
Your house. Just never get through.
Look, you've never wronged me.
I think he should take time to come and see, you know, the old muckers, the old pals. Happy days.
Myself, Chris, my mother, and Keith, my brother, at my wedding. That's me and Chris sitting on the cannon gun at Dudley Zoo. This is a photo of me schooling Chris how to drink beer when he was about 8 years of age. This is of Chris when he was at university. And this is a picture of Chris when he got his degree.
This was my room. What happened was I'd been to university and stuff, and I left with 2 degrees, an honours degree in English and a master's degree in English literature. So I thought there's only one choice for me. So I went on the dole for 3.5 years. And this was where I came to live. And this was my mate's room, Marina. He lived there. And we met because I got drunk one night and I went back into the wrong room accidentally.
There was this big, hairy, ginger-bearded, curly-haired guy just lying sort of face up on my bed. And I just walked into my room and I was met with this vision. And he didn't say anything. He just started laughing maniacally.
And he walked in and there was his trunk on his bed. So that's how we became mates.
And I just sort of quietly shut the door and just nailed myself in, because I just thought, this guy's a nutcase.
And we always used to say, Marino said, oh, I want to work in television. And I used to say, oh, yeah, well, I want to be a comedian. And 2 blokes on the dole, clearly that was never going to happen. And now he works in television, and I'm a comedian, so it can happen, you see. This very spot is where my mate Marino and me used to sunbathe on nice days. He used to have this stuff, coconut oil, which we used to rub on ourselves and lie here and get bronzed. And then we used to go to Liberty's bar on the Agley Road and not pull. That was one of the aspects of our life. I'm just moving into a new house in London, right? 2 million quid. To 15 quid a week. 10 years later, 2 million quid. I'd just given up drinking, and basically I need another mega obsession to take over. So I went into comedy. Look at that. Look, these are the routines that I used to do at the Forex Cabaret in the early 90s. That's them. All written in little scribbled notes so I could keep them in my pocket.
When I used to visit my dad's house, he'd say, our Chris, you know, he says, he spends a lot of time away from home these days. He says, I think he has to go and do these lectures and that. Now he's got his degree and that. And all the while he was appearing at different clubs and that, all around the country, but he never told us. And one day, I bought the Independent newspaper, and there was a great big 4-page article, and I couldn't believe it. And of course the name as well, I never recognised the name. And I said to this Indian lad that was working, my apprentice, I said, this is my brother here. And, you know, and it was.
I needed a stage name. When I was a kid, there was this bloke who played in my dad's dominoes team, and I always really liked his name. He was called Arthur Broadhurst. Nah, not really. He was called Frank Skinner.
I did my first gig December the 9th, 1987, and I got my first television in the May of the following year. I met a bird in a pub in Arbonne and brought her back here one night. And we got back about midnight, and I was just coming through the door there, and one of the neighbours must have heard a noise or something, and he came out to have a look. This girl was a bit drunk, and she said to him, she said, it's all right, I've just come back to shag a celebrity. The view from my balcony, I think, is as good as any view you could have in a city in England. Just come and have a look at this view. It's beautiful. This is a worry, first of all.
What Frank is he's very, very confessional about sex. But there are ways in which Frank is a very private person. I mean, Frank is a devout Catholic, for example, and that's never really come out in anything he's done.
I was born a Roman Catholic, and then when I was 17, being a rebellious teenager, I decided it was all hypocrisy and nonsense, and I turned my back on the church. Then I got to about 29, and as my 30th birthday loomed, things started to change for me. I dumped my long-term girlfriend, I stopped drinking, and I returned to the Roman Catholic Church.
In today's British society, you can believe in horoscopes and feng shui, and you can carry a crystal around, and it's all fairly acceptable stuff. You have to actually have Christian belief to be guaranteed the label weird. It's one of the last great guarantees of oddness. For example, I think that little bit of round white wafer bread thing actually becomes the body and the blood of a bloke who died 2,000 years ago in Israel. And the wine, on the occasions you get wine, does the same. Which is why, as a sort of an alcoholic, I can still go to communion and still drink communion wine and not feel I've broken my pledge, because to me it's not wine, it's the body and blood of a bloke who died 2,000 years ago. Now, even I, as a Catholic, can recognise that that is really weird. If you're sitting at home thinking, switch this off because the funny man's gone a bit odd, I understand, and don't panic. I know. What can I do? I'm stuck with it. This is the confession box where I've confessed many a sin in my time. From little, I nicked some sweets off my brother's sins to more grown-up stuff. When I was quite a young buck, a mate of mine bet me a fiver that I hadn't got the guts to go with, shall we say, a receiver of swollen goods. And there were two women standing on the corner who were clearly in that line of work. So the better looking of the two came over, as far as I could tell in the light from the lamppost. And I said, excuse me, can you tell me where I can get a good time? She beckoned me into her house. I got in there, and I have to admit that in the bright light of a bare light bulb, she didn't look great. So anyway, she gradually undressed, in fact quite quickly. She had no sense of the dramatic. And she kind of leaned back on this settee next to the fire. So I kind of just went for it. While we were mid-doing it, the door on the inside of the house rattled a bit, and I could hear children's voices, and I heard a woman say, "Hey, come from that door," she said. "Corky's got a gentleman in there." So there you are, my first love. It was horrible, really. I wouldn't like to do it again. I don't know if I could stomach it now, really. When I was writing the book, there's lots of things I thought I won't put in the book. But people who write books now, and people who talk about their lives, and people who talk about anything in public, never say anything anymore because they're so worried that it's going to get into the press and it'll ruin their career. Like when Glenn Hoddle said that thing about the disabled people or whatever, one word out of place and you're ruined forever. And of course it is true, and there will be people who watch this and who read the book and think, "Oh, I don't really like him anymore with his nasty, filthy, sordid past." But what is the point of a world where nobody ever says anything, never has any opinions, and never tells you about themselves at all? What's the point of people liking someone that you're not anyway? I've never, ever done a book reading before in my life, mainly because I've never written a book before, and they don't like you reading other people's, these things. If I turn up and read A Brief History of Time, Stephen Hawking would be well pissed off. You've never seen him when he's angry. "Come on, I'll take the pair of you on." My book comes out soon, and it's supposed to be serialised in the papers. And I had a thing from my publisher about things that he don't want me to mention at the gig or at this reading I'm doing. So obviously they've thought that, yeah, we'll have him shagging in a lift and having sex with some groupies, and we'll put in the death of his parents, and that'll make him sound all colourful and emotional and both sides, and that's rubbish, I think. The book is, oh my God. It's Stephen Hawking with an Uzi. Eat, lad, you bastards. That just pisses me off that you write in a book, quite an emotional moment about, say, your mum dying, and then someone wants to stick it in one of the tabloids because it's juicy stuff. It's not the way it's written, you know what I mean? It's crap. I'm never writing another book, ever. If you don't know who I am, this could be called Frank Skinner, My Life as a Novelty Slippers Salesman. At the moment, I wish I hadn't written the book. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. Hello.
Nice to meet you.
All right.
Yes,
Suzanne.
by the way.
Frank Skinner, hello.
Hello, you all right?
Yes, I'm fine, and you?
This is my crew who I take with me everywhere in my whole life. I always arrive wherever I go with the camera and sound man and all that. It just makes me feel at home. So down here is the office where I wrote much of the book on this very computer.
It's an honour and privilege to meet Frank Skinner.
Text in if you want to ask Frank a question.
Frank!
Suzanne.
Frank Skinner.
What's it like being back?
Well,
I wish you could see Frank.
I've just written my autobiography. This is the book in its rough form. So I might do you a short reading. What do you think?
I've read somewhere that it's a warts and all biography.
Yes. Have you seen my warts? They look like warts. It's actually a price list for the blind. Robbie Williams, I have to admit, is an excessively good-looking man. That's true, isn't he? Can't deny that. I'm not. Don't do me your local news upset face. It's all right to talk about it. You just went... Blonde. Bring them in. Let's shag them all. I have convinced myself over the years that appearance is only part of the package, and then I can make up a lot of the shortfall with charm and wit, or in later years, with money and celebrity. The charm and wit supplement has been at best a bit hit and miss. I have often heard it said that it's possible to laugh a woman into bed, like laughter was some sort of morally acceptable date rape drug.
Come on, dance, you know you want to. Oh, fantastic.
Before I started doing comedy professionally, the normal process was I'd meet a girl, make her laugh until she was doubled up and breathless, and then, when she'd composed herself again, she'd say, well, I've had a fantastic evening, and now I'm going home with this physically attractive bloke.
Don't laugh, it's supposed to be sexy. Oh, man. You got a great grip. Whoa!
The whole laugh 'em into bed thing is a myth invented by ugly blokes who think they're funny and women who want to pretend that they can see beyond mere physical attraction. What if your husband's watching? Is he in television?
He's a press photographer.
Is he?
Yeah.
I used to perform here every Thursday night at the room upstairs, which is where comedy always used to happen then. And this is it. This was my regular dressing room. No posters on the wall then, nothing on the wall actually then. I was so cocky by the time I was doing this a few weeks because I was the regular compere. I'd be sitting here in my corner with going through my jokes, and the other acts who were up from London were all pacing up and down like this, thinking, oh my God, it's Frank's crowd and we've got to try and win them over. So I'd hear all the crowd in there and lots of woo going on, and off I'd go towards the stage.
Wait there for fucking ages, sort it out.
And then I'd turn, bump. By now, they'd already realised that I was coming in, so there was a bit of a whoo. I'd walk round. This room was where I learnt to be a stand-up comedian.
In 1990, I was at the Edinburgh Festival with Frank, and again, he was supporting me, but he was better than me.
It'd be terrible if I'm shit now, wouldn't it? So, I haven't actually been on this stage since 1991.
Even though I thought it was brilliant, I thought, oh, he's really timed it badly. You know, if only he'd been around 10 years, 15 years before, he'd be a superstar, but he's kind of... He's too old-fashioned, almost.
I got a text message from my niece, right? And I thought it was from this bird that I'd met in a pub last week. And I sent back the reply.
The real alternative to alternative comedy was proper comedy, wasn't it? And that's what Frank seemed to be delivering. And you went along to the show, and what you got was a bloke in the middle of the stage, telling jokes and interacting with the audience.
Is my memory playing tricks, or have you got a really nice arse? And I sent it to my niece, ladies and gentlemen.
This very straightforward, almost old-fashioned way of being a comedian suddenly struck you as being terribly new and different, and it certainly stood out from the crowd.
Maybe it was raining, the dog was in the corner like this. Where are you, you bastard?
I was on Frank's This Is Your Life, but they cut me off for telling the truth. Because he asked me what I saw in Frank, and I said he'd got the best knob gags in the business.
On Channel 4, they had a series called Uncensored. It's the TV programmes you were never meant to see. So I'm ready. I don't know if you've ever tried having a wank to a documentary about the miners' strike.
I'll never forget how he had the audience eating out of his hand, and not just with love, but also with cruelty.
I thought, well, at least if I'm going a bit bald, I'll save money on hair products. But shut up, you twat. What's the chances of you saying something funnier than me?
Since I started doing comedy, both my parents have died. My marriage went wrong, various other relationships have gone down the toilet, etc. But I get so much pure white heat joy from being a comic, from waking up every morning and think this is what I do for a living.
So in Korea, you get your hair cut, and then you set up special services. The barber walks out of the booth, and a woman walks in and gives you a hand job.
The timing when my father died, it sort of gave him more freedom to express himself in a way that the public like. You know, a bit of swearing and whatever, you know what I mean? Well, my dad had disowned him. If he'd have seen any of these videos or anything, like, you know what I mean? He wouldn't have been allowed in the house.
Some woman saying, so, where are you going for your holidays this year then?
It was a shame, really, that my parents never saw him. You know, like Mike the Great, like.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're the best. Good night. Everyone has a special moment in their life, a particular magical time that can never be repeated. For me, it was the summer of 1996. The Lightning Seeds were going to do the official England song for Euro 96. And Ian Brodie, the main man with the Lightning Seeds, wondered if me and Dave would write the words for it.
Football songs, even apart from England songs, FA Cup songs, you know, are the worst things, really. And you know, I don't think there's a shred of emotion in any of them, really. Do you know what I mean?
People sing stuff on the terraces that is kind of made up organically on the terraces. It's very unusual for a song that comes from outside to be sung on the terraces.
Because we'd never really written a song before, we decided the best thing to do was to sit and write what we thought about English football. And the fact that England often let us down. It's coming home, it's coming, football's coming home. There'd been a long time since we'd won anything. We wrote down the fact that we still got flashes like in 1990 when we knew we could play good football, we knew we could do it. We wanted to say that England can do it and that we believed that they could do it again. So we wrote about the doubts and we wrote about the disappointments and we wrote about the hopes and the optimism and the good times. And then we turned it into a song. Occasionally, things happen perfectly timed. You're in the right place and the right time, and the mood is right. If you wanted to write it as a film, the set was perfect. It was Wembley Stadium, the weather was perfect, the context was perfect, and the song just seemed to be the perfect soundtrack for that movie. It is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me. And right the way around the ground, all these crosses of St. George started waving.
It created, I think, a sort of non-violent nationalism. That happened at Wembley in 1996 with no sense that it was attached to violence or hatred or whatever.
And I remember the day after we lost to Germany, I remember it hitting my gut that that was it, the dream was over. I couldn't work it out. I don't know, if you don't care about football, you won't care about this. And by now you'll be bored with it and think, oh God, it was a football match. But if you know about football, if you care about football, I don't have to explain what it meant. I don't have to explain what I feel when I think about it. Yeah, wake up. Oh. Hello, so this is my new home. I moved in 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I haven't actually got hot water yet, but I've got a big telly. This was the first thing that went in, and a sound system. But isn't that a thing of beauty? I got in yesterday and watched a cowboy film, and suddenly I was at home. There's a submarine in the basement which didn't quite fit. Now this is actually my kitchen, more or less. Take that off, light it, and you get like a naked. Now this is my. I haven't got a kitchen yet. But the woman who's designing my kitchen designed Madonna's kitchen.
So there's a couple of receipts on there. Not all prostitutes give them, but...
I just can't go.
Obviously, I unpack the mirror immediately. I'm going to have a big power shower at the back with jets that come from the side as well. Because as you get older, you get folds that are downward jet misses.
Frank is Frank, and when he walks down the street, he's always Frank. And I love him for that and for being brave to do that.
I reckon, you know, he'll be on the end of that pier. He's 92.
I've still got one of his porn videos. Maybe you can give that back to him. I'm serious.
If I'd been good at sport, I would have developed a kind of an arrogance about myself that would have stopped me being a good comic. If I'd been good looking, I wouldn't have needed to try and be funny, and I wouldn't have been so easily self-deprecating, and that would have stopped me being a good comic. All the things that might have got in the way of me being a comic have all been taken away, so I can concentrate. Because I have no other skills, so to speak, it's a clear, straight line. The way you see things differently from other people often have all sorts of dodgy side effects and make you perhaps a bit weird and a bit odd and a bit not good things. But if someone came to me and said, I can cure all that, but you'll have to give up the comedy gene. You could have like a shot of me sitting slightly hunched, maybe over a cup of tea and a cigarette in the dressing room, and then a voice off camera be saying, so, you know, what went wrong, Frank? And I'd be going, well, I don't... And it'd be good for me to be seen, I think, on cameras, slightly broken and troubled. Because any women watching that, I think, well, he's not just that end of the pier, mouthy leader. He's actually got quite a lot of depth to him. I bet he's very good in bed. And then pull a slightly psychotic woman and have a short, painful physical relationship with her, then she'll take her own life in a bedsit somewhere in the northeast of England, and I'll be incriminated in some way. That'll all be in the press. I'll start drinking again. Then we can do another documentary about my decline, in which I'll be a broken man with a slight nervous twitch and chain smoking and have a drink in my hand and say, you know, at the end of the day, what is fame? It means nothing anyway. I'm happier now. And people will say, well, that was terrible, but gripping television, it'll win a couple of awards and I'll die. And that should put the sales of the autobiography up a bit, I would have thought. Any woman who comes into my life is the other woman, because it's comedy that I'm in love with. You know, that gets my first thing. And that might be a bad thing. When I split up with my wife, she said, you'll end up like Benny Hill, you know, found dead in your flat after you've been lying there for ages. And I thought, end up like Benny Hill. Brilliant. Brilliant. That'll do me.
Well, tonight at 12:30 on Letterman, there's a guest list that Frank would no doubt love on his show. There's Catherine Zeta-Jones and Coldplay. As for next tonight on 2, we investigate another case of real crime.